I never imagined a quiet evening at home could shift the way I saw my family, or myself. It started with an ache in my shoulders that refused to fade, a physical reminder of weeks spent juggling work, errands, and obligations that felt heavier than I wanted to admit. I sank onto the couch, massaging the tension away with my own hands, when Aaron appeared in the doorway. My step-nephew, 24, strikingly composed, and somehow always aware of the subtle dynamics in the room, leaned casually against the frame, a faint smirk tugging at the corners of his lips. "You look tense," he said, and there was a lilt in his voice, playful yet perceptive, that made me pause. I hadn't expected him home from his trip until tomorrow, and the surprise of seeing him stirred an odd combination of comfort and unease. "I'm fine," I replied automatically, though my voice lacked conviction. Aaron raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced, and took a step closer. The air between us felt different somehow, charged, though I couldn't yet identify why. "I could help," he offered, almost casually. "With a massage. Learned a few new techniques while I was away. Could work wonders." The suggestion made my heart skip, a reflexive reaction I didn't understand. Part of me wanted to laugh it off, to treat it as a harmless joke. Another part, an unexpected, uneasy part, considered the relief his hands might bring. I guess that could work," I said finally, trying to sound nonchalant. The moment I agreed, I felt a shiver of anticipation, an awareness of how fragile the boundary between us could feel in silence. As Aaron guided me to sit, I noticed the little details I had always brushed past, the sharpness of his gaze, the ease with which he carried himself, the faint scent of the cologne he'd brought back from his travels. They were familiar, yet new in ways that made my chest tighten unexpectedly. He began slowly, pressing his hands into the knots in my shoulders, a rhythm both steady and intimate. I closed my eyes, attempting to focus solely on the sensation, but my thoughts betrayed me. There was an undeniable tension, something neither of us had named, that pulsed quietly beneath the surface, and I sensed that tonight would not remain ordinary. The room held its breath with us. Caught between normalcy and something far more complicated, I realized, with a mix of fear and curiosity, that this simple, seemingly innocent offer might unravel everything I thought I understood about family, desire, and the fragile rules we live by. And in that moment, I knew. Nothing about this evening would remain the same. I had always thought of Aaron as merely my step-nephew, the son of my husband's previous marriage, a figure whose presence I respected but rarely understood. Yet, over the years, subtle shifts had occurred, unnoticed until moments like this one. There was a confidence in the way he moved, a quiet awareness in his eyes, as if he could see more than I intended to reveal. It unsettled me, though I wasn't sure why. The evening unfolded slowly. Rain pattered against the windows, soft and insistent, filling the house with a private rhythm that made everything feel suspended outside time. The dim light of the living room cast gentle shadows, highlighting the contours of his face and the way his hands moved with careful precision. I couldn't deny the comfort I felt as tension began to release from my shoulders, but it was accompanied by something unfamiliar, an acute awareness of his proximity. "You've been working too hard," he said softly, his voice measured yet warm, as if he had stepped into the unspoken corners of my mind. "I suppose I have," I admitted, letting the words escape more freely than I intended. There was a vulnerability in my tone, an opening I hadn't realized I was offering. Aaron's hands didn't falter. He applied pressure here, eased tension there, and all the while, I noticed the subtle nuances. How his thumbs lingered longer than necessary, how his forearms brushed gently against mine. I told myself it was professional, merely skillful technique, yet the deeper I relaxed, the more I recognized the thrum of something else, something undeniably magnetic between us. I shifted slightly, aware of my own heartbeat. This wasn't the first time I had felt a peculiar awareness in his presence, but tonight it was sharper, undeniable. Each movement, each glance carried weight, and I realized the boundary between step-family familiarity and something far more dangerous had thinned without our conscious consent. "I didn't expect this," I murmured, almost to myself, my voice betraying the flutter of emotions I struggled to contain. Aaron paused briefly, his gaze meeting mine with a quiet intensity. There was no judgment, only a mirrored curiosity that startled me. It was as if, in that instant, we acknowledged the tension without speaking it aloud. A delicate, fragile acknowledgement that made the room feel both intimate and perilous. I drew in a breath, aware of the growing complexity of my feelings. What began as a simple gesture, a massage, had transformed into a charged encounter where unspoken desires and forbidden curiosity danced silently between us. The comfort of his touch was entwined with a caution I couldn't ignore, a whisper of danger beneath the warmth. By the time the massage ended, I was left with a trembling awareness that nothing about our relationship would remain as simple as it had been. The evening had shifted something fundamental, leaving me both unsettled and acutely alive to the possibilities that lingered, unspoken in the spaces between us, and in that charged silence, I understood. The story had only just begun. After that evening, the memory of Aaron's hands on my shoulders lingered longer than it should have, seeping into my thoughts at unexpected moments. I found myself replaying the way he had paused, the intensity in his gaze, the subtle brush of skin that had sent an unfamiliar shiver through me. I tried to dismiss it as fleeting, a product of fatigue and imagination, but the tension between us had shifted, and I could feel it in every interaction. Days passed, and the simplest exchanges became charged. His casual smiles, a lingering glance as he passed by, even the way he spoke with careful attention to my words. All of it pulled at something I wasn't prepared to name. I was aware, painfully aware of the boundary I was skirting, and yet, the closer I tried to maintain distance, the more magnetic his presence became. One evening, we found ourselves alone again in the living room. David had left early for a late meeting, leaving only the soft hum of the heater and the muted rhythm of traffic outside. Aaron leaned against the doorway, the faint scent of his cologne familiar and disarming. "You've been quiet," he remarked, his tone casual but probing. "I've just had a lot on my mind," I replied, attempting a lightness that felt false. He moved closer, settling onto the arm of the couch beside me. "Sometimes," he said softly, "it helps to let someone in, even if just a little." His words were innocent enough on the surface, but the weight beneath them was unmistakable. I felt my pulse quicken, awareness sharpening with a mix of anticipation and fear. We spoke then, but our conversation was a delicate dance around unspoken truths. Each laugh, each sigh carried layers of meaning. My thoughts betrayed me constantly. Why did his touch linger in my memory? Why did I find myself imagining more than I should? I felt guilty for even entertaining the possibility, yet I couldn't deny the thrill that flickered in my chest when he leaned just slightly closer. At one point, his hand brushed mine, an accidental fleeting contact that lingered a fraction too long. I caught my breath, heart hammering, acutely conscious of the dangerous line we were treading. He looked at me then, eyes searching, as if silently questioning the same unspoken desires. The tension became almost unbearable, a taut thread stretched between caution and temptation. I realized with startling clarity that what had begun as a simple massage was evolving into something far more complex, an emotional storm neither of us was equipped to navigate. By the time the evening ended, we were both acutely aware that the boundary between familial familiarity and forbidden desire had been tested, weakened, and perhaps even broken. The unspoken question hung in the air. What happens next, when curiosity and longing collide in ways we cannot easily contain? And in that charged silence, I understood the truth. The comfort we had shared was no longer innocent. It was a doorway, and we had both stepped through. That night, the house seemed smaller, the air thicker, as if it had absorbed the tension that had been building between us for weeks. Aaron was in the living room again, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp line of his jaw and the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I sat across from him, aware of every movement, every subtle shift in posture, as if the room itself were attuned to our unspoken desires. "I can't stop thinking about that evening," he admitted quietly. Voice low enough that I barely heard it over the hum of the heater. My stomach tightened, My pulse quickened, because I had been thinking the same thing, though I hadn't dared to voice it. "I know," I whispered, my throat tight. "I've tried to push it away, but I can't." The confession felt like stepping off a cliff, vulnerable and terrifying, yet strangely liberating. For a moment we just sat there, the silence heavy but intimate. Every glance carried weight, every breath seemed shared, as though our emotions had formed a language that words could no longer capture. The line between familial familiarity and something far more dangerous had blurred completely, and acknowledging it was both thrilling and terrifying. Aaron leaned forward slightly, and I noticed the hesitation in his movements, the careful deliberation, as though he were balancing on the edge of something he couldn't yet name. "Emily," he said softly, whatever this is, it feels wrong, and yet I can't ignore it." I nodded, my fingers tightening around the edge of the couch cushion. "I know, it's wrong, and it's everything I've been trying not to feel. But it's there, undeniable, and pretending it isn't won't make it go away." My voice trembled slightly, betraying the conflict roiling within me. Guilt, longing, fear, and an unexpected surge of desire, all tangled together. We both knew that crossing this boundary would change everything. Yet despite the caution, the curiosity, the silent longing that lingered between us, neither of us turned away. There was a shared understanding. This was a truth that could not be denied, even if it carried consequences neither of us were prepared to face. I felt a wave of emotion, a mixture of fear and exhilaration, and realized how deeply this connection had already altered me. The comfort I once felt in his presence had transformed into something charged, something potent and dangerous, yet impossible to ignore. And in that moment, as our eyes met and words failed us, I understood the reality we were staring into. This was not a fleeting temptation or a momentary lapse. It was a truth, a forbidden truth that demanded recognition, one that would shape our lives in ways we couldn't yet comprehend. The night stretched around us, heavy and intimate, leaving a lingering question in its wake. How far could we allow ourselves to be pulled by a desire we both knew we should resist? The days following that night were heavy with unspoken truths. Aaron and I moved through the house with an awareness that had not existed before, a tension laced with curiosity and caution. Our interactions were carefully measured, glances held a second longer than necessary, casual touches lingering too briefly, but always restrained by the weight of what had been acknowledged and what remained unsaid. I found myself replaying the evenings in my mind, the memory of his hands on my shoulders, the quiet admissions that had passed between us. Each recollection stirred a mixture of guilt and longing, a reminder of the complexity of desire when entangled with family, and the fragility of trust that had always existed between us. I questioned my own motives, my own reactions, trying to understand why such a seemingly simple act could shift everything so profoundly. Aaron, too, seemed changed. He moved with a subtle care, as if aware that any misstep could shatter the fragile balance we had created. Yet, in his presence, I felt alive in ways I hadn't anticipated, more aware of myself, more honest about the emotions I had long kept buried. There was a strange intimacy in the restraint, a shared acknowledgement of the boundaries we had crossed without taking the final step. I realized that this connection was less about the act itself and more about the recognition of our desires, the acknowledgement of emotions too complex for easy categorization. It was a mirror, reflecting parts of myself I had avoided, the longing for closeness, the yearning to be seen, and the dangerous thrill of forbidden attraction. In the quiet moments, I understood that our story was not one of simple morality or indiscretion. It was an exploration of human vulnerability, frailty, and the intensity of suppressed emotions. Despite the tension, life continued. David remained unaware of the undercurrents between Aaron and me, and we maintained the delicate illusion of normalcy. But the experience had left an indelible mark, shaping our interactions, sharpening our awareness of one another, and planting a seed of curiosity that neither time nor distance could erase. I often wondered what the future held. Could we navigate the boundaries we had tested without causing irreparable damage? Could the desire and tension remain unspoken, contained within the quiet understanding that had formed between us? I didn't know. And perhaps that uncertainty was part of what made the memory so vivid, so alive. In the end, I accepted that some truths are not meant to be resolved neatly. They exist to challenge us, to illuminate hidden corners of our hearts, and to teach us about the complexity of human emotions. That night, that fleeting touch, that shared acknowledgement, though forbidden, revealed the delicate, intricate layers of connection that define us. And as I sat alone in the quiet of the house, I realized that the story wasn't over. It lived on in memory, in thought, and in the silent recognition that some moments once experienced can never be undone, only understood.